Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
Pastor Ray Noland, a veteran of World War II, attended Rockmont Bible College shortly after the end of the war. After pastoring a few churches in the western part of the United States, Pastor Noland and his family moved to Delco, North Carolina, to be the pastor of Livingston Baptist. In addition to being the pastor of Livingston, he held a men's Bible study in Wilmington. Dr. Noland saw an opportunity to have a greater impact in the Wilmington area, so in 1953 he brought the first independent Baptist church to Wilmington, North Carolina. Pastor Ray Noland, along with 23 others that shared his vision, purchased a small building on North 9th Street from the Seventh-day Adventist Church and started Grace Baptist Church. The church quickly grew, and in 1956, Grace built a larger facility on South College Road. At the time, the church was averaging attendance of more than 1,400 people and a bus ministry of greater than 400 kids. September of 1970, a young pastor came to intern under Pastor Noland. Jim Hershenhan agreed to come to Wilmington for 9 months to serve at Grace.
I received a phone call one day, and I did not at first know who the gentleman was who called. But he mentioned to me that my pastor, Dr. Price, had given him my name, and he was Dr. Ray Noland. And he asked if I would have an interest in coming to work for him and work with him for a 9-month period. And of course, in my praying, I had not envisioned the fact that it would be a short period of time, but rather would be an extended period of time with an older gentleman with whom I could work and learn. When we came to Grace, we had 2 of our children. Jana had been born, and Jay had also been born. And so when we came from Georgia to Wilmington, we had a child that was just 6 months old, as I recall that Jay was, and Jana was just barely 2 years of age at that time.
At the time, no one knew God's plan for Pastor Hershenhan or Grace.
I knew that I'd need to give my heart to that ministry for that 9-month period, which I was, of course, glad to do as I learned from him and saw the ministry and the church, just a remarkable place. But little did I realize that 9 months on the day, the Lord would take Dr. Noland to heaven. He had preached his last sermon in Indianapolis, and his text was, "I have fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith." And so little realizing that that would be the last time that he would preach. And even more astounding was the fact that on his way home, he became very, very sick. And just shortly after he arrived home, he passed away. Interestingly enough, his death day was the end of 9 months on the day. And so that became for us an astounding reality that stirred us and challenged us to keep moving forward, because we don't always know what tomorrow holds for us.
After 14 years, the church had once again outgrown its facility, and it was time to find a place that the church and the academy could continue to grow.
It was not long until we realized that the limited space that we had when we were there on South College was that the school could not grow as it looked like it was going to unless we had more property and a place to build a larger facility. And so one of our men came and mentioned our going to see if we could not find a piece of property that would meet the needs of not only the church as it grew, because the bus ministry was such a valuable part of that ministry back in those days as well. And we were seeing just wonderful results from that. And so when the men found the place on North College, where the church is located presently, we saw that the property was available and that by the grace of God we could secure that property and get the space that we needed that would help the church have space for growth. The bus ministry could increase.
After more than 35 years at Grace, Pastor Hershenhan decided to retire.
Last Sunday of '06 was the time that we began our ministry in mission work, and we're honored and privileged to be able to be involved in that field of service.
The man that God brought to Grace to succeed him was Alan Benson.
I actually was at Grace 2 separate times on staff. The first time came through a contact with Baron Nobles that came out of my days as being there on ministry team, and then also through knowing him childhood from Nova Scotia. But he was the contact that led to us eventually coming in 1996 to be the youth pastor. And we were there about 3 years and left and went on and did other ministry training, and eventually were pastoring in Florida when Pastor Hershenhan was looking at retiring. Church reached out, and through a series of circumstances, the Lord led us joyfully back to Grace in 2005 to become the senior pastor.
During Pastor Benson's time at Grace, the church saw exciting things happen.
You know, God did some remarkable things during those days. The school grew, the church grew, and really we had a ministry focus on making an impact in Wilmington and around the world. Some of the things that developed during those days were intentionally outreach-oriented. We started the Work on Wilmington Days, where our student body officers organized the student body to really go out and do things in the community. And much of that was directed through our school administration and staff, but intentional ways that we could be involved in our community. And then also we started ministries intentionally to reach out and bring people in. And so ministries like Grief Share for people that had lost a loved one, for divorce care for people that had gone through a painful divorce. And so a number of ministries like that intentionally designed for us to be able to reach out and bring people in. And so there was a wonderful impact. During those days, the testimony of our church and our school and its involvement in the community was very well known and very well received. We every year would do fund drives or ways that our students could get involved in gathering dry goods and those sort of things. And then bring organizations in that we would present those donations to, all as ways of not just social impact, but spiritual impact. And that had a real impact in the community.
After 8 years as senior pastor at Grace, the Benson family moved to another ministry.
So 2005 to roughly 2013, and the Lord moved us to Chicagoland area for 5 years after that. But they were wonderful days. We absolutely loved our time at Grace and in Wilmington.
Grace was once again faced with finding the man that God wanted to take over the reins of the church. After a long and extensive search, the church found that person was already at Grace. Pastor Jay Knowles took over as senior pastor of Grace in November of 2013.
I had been pastoring up in New England for a number of years. And during my time in Florida, I actually worked with Pastor Benson, who was my predecessor here at Grace. And He was looking for a discipleship pastor, so he had reached out to me and asked me to come and join his team here. So we moved down 2010, put the kids in the Christian school here at WCA, and I became the assistant pastor under Alan Benson. I became the senior pastor here at Grace in 2013, November of 2013. And so I've been the senior pastor here for 6 years.
From 2013, Grace has undergone some changes under the leadership of Pastor Knowles.
I think we have grown very close to each other. What I've been very pleased with is we've seen a lot of new people come into our ministry. And because of that, you always get new ideas and new people coming in with different church backgrounds. And I think we've changed for the better in that we have come together as a group. And I think you see a very real spirit of unity in our body. Not that that wasn't there before, but I just think seeing this group of people from different religious backgrounds, different versions of Christianity, Baptist or whatever, coming together and unity in our body, I think has been a very good, positive thing over the last several years.
Grace Baptist Church is celebrating our 65th anniversary. Now, what does the future hold for the next 65 years of Grace?
I think every church in our country is wrestling with what the future is going to bring for churches. What is the next generation going to bring as millennials are getting older and now Gen Z is coming up behind them? They are some of the most unchurched people in our country, in many regards in our history. So I think Grace Baptist Church, like so many other churches, we have got to meet people where they are and engaging them where they are without the assumption that they know much or anything about Scripture. So I think Grace and our next step as a church has to become more oriented to reaching people with very little church background or maybe no church background and becoming purposeful in engaging them, showing them the love of Christ and bringing them into our body. We can't rest on the fact that we've got a solid foundation of people that have been a part of our church for a long time. That's great. But we also need to see an emphasis on reaching out again into a very unchurched culture and showing them what Christ is. And so we've got to engage them where they are. And I think that's our future. And I think that's going to help us grow numerically, but I also think it's going to help us grow spiritually as we're reaching out to others.
I first be